And we are back once again, Friday evening. Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. How are you, sir?
I'm phenomenal. Absolutely
Good. Wow,
phenomenal.
I like that.
Yeah. It's the new bar that I aspire to every week.
Raising the bar.
Raising the bar.
Phenomenal. Well, this is very good. It's starting to get cool here in good old New Hampshire. And we are staying warm, though. We've got some wine today. No wine sponsor.
I know. I was surprised. I'm assuming it got lost in the mail. Simple oversight of some sort.
Yeah, I think we heard from a few people. There should be wine coming. If anybody wants to be a wine sponsor, that is definitely available to you. You can reach out show@vinarmani.com. Otherwise, if you just want to help out, if you are a listener and you enjoy the show, best way to do that is to go on iTunes and give us a little review or Stitcher. Today, we are talking about the moon. We said that this was going to be our topic. We said this last week.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I find it interesting that there was both, in the week that we said we're going to do the moon, there was both moon news, with SpaceX announcing the first private tourist to go to the moon and circle around it.
Okay, yeah.
And sun news with the shutdown of the Solar Observatory.
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic.
Man, talk about everybody getting their conspiracy theory in.
Oh, my God. It was awesome. And to be perfectly fair, I mean, when you have the government rush in and shut down a facility and then don't explain to anybody why you've done it for a week.
Well, they still haven't explained why.
That's true. It was a, undefined threat or whatever.
And supposedly there was a person who was a threat, right? But it was, but still we're not really sure. That supposedly everybody's back now in that place. But man, it was pretty touch and go. It was touch and go.
The weirdest thing to me was that not only did they shut down the actual facility and the surrounding buildings, but also the post office, which was not directly adjacent. It was like right down the road.
Well, now, as I understand this, everything in that compound was like, there was only about like 30 people who were residents there, and everybody who was a resident there was like a staff member sort of this whole... Because they had people living there, so it was kind of like this very small community.
Yeah, it was like a campus kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. Because the people needed to be there, I guess, 24 hours a day to work on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a little bit of a freak. When they first did that, I'm gonna admit, I was freaked out. I was like, did they see something happening with the sun? Are we about to have like a massive solar... My first thing was, we're going to have a massive solar flare. Then there are people like, oh no, so what are all the conspiracy theories? They saw a fleet of aliens. I heard that one. Planet X. They saw Planet X. Nibiru is trailing behind us.
Yep.
Asteroid is going to hit. Solar flare, of course. Now, the one that made the most sense to me was Chinese spying on White Sands, utilizing the array, or setting up some antennas somewhere else.
Right.
That one really resonated with me because, and I've told my pirate radio story of like being in LA, setting up my antennas in an antenna farm, and then when I saw them walking around and I saw some shots of the buildings, there's just antennas everywhere. You could easily squirrel some of the arrays that have been up there look like they're old, like they've been up there 20 years. You could easily squirrel away some other antennas or some monitoring gear or something.
Absolutely, and it's a great high vantage point, because it's kind of on a peak. So I mean, you have a great vantage point for viewing. If you have long distance lenses, you can see anything going around in that area. You could pick up all the signals. I mean, if you were a Chinese or other government infiltrator, that's a great place to pick up info.
Yeah, and the thing was with the Black Hawk helicopter. I do think that there may have been some, because there were a few things where they were like, the reports were from people who were there on the ground that there were FBI agents who were around the antenna arrays, who were going around looking at antennas. Then you had the Black Hawk, but very often those Black Hawks are fitted with like SIGINT packages, so like to be able to sort of try to triangulate where a signal was coming from, right?
Sure.
That's why you would use the Black Hawk, because it would have that package on it that could actually like pick up signals or jam them as well. Because that's another thing that you might want to do, is you might want to jam a signal. So they've got a signal jamming package on it. You might want to get up close, jam all the signals, to prevent someone from sending a signal to, let's say, if it had attached storage, to delete or destroy the attached storage, something like that.
Yeah.
So I do think that it was very likely some sort of threat of surveillance, that they were doing like a counter surveillance thing.
Yep, and it also ties into the post office being shut down, because what if the co-conspirator, if you will, actually worked at the post office and was actually, somehow getting information out that couldn't be transmitted digitally. So to me, that theory makes the most sense of all the ones that I've heard, is that this is some foreign intelligence who was trying to set up some kind of spy operation. They had a partner at the post office, and so that's why both facilities were shut down. They did their investigation. Who knows how much they'll talk about it.
Yeah, or even, it could have even been something like, I don't know how big of a post office it was, but if they had traced something to a particular post office box, right? So like, if it was like, oh, we've got this spy, and here's this post office box that's listed. Like if they caught somebody, oh, here's a post office box. Where is this post office box? Oh, it's overlooking White Sands testing range and an Air Force base. Let's go right now.
Yep.
Like, enforce everybody, get up there. You know what I mean? Like, let's do it immediately. And that's the thing that it looked like. But it was interesting to me, and why I wanted to bring this up for this show, and why I think it's appropriate as a good starting point, is because I've been thinking about it all week. It's, I've talked about the whole dim age idea, how we're coming into a dim age. I think that was a prime example of some dim age shit. Let's just put it like that. Like, as opposed to dark ages, like this is what the dim age looks like. That this police action happens, and the first things that, like, the loudest noise that's being pushed out about this within social media, within YouTube and all of this. Some of these videos talking about these conspiracy theories about Nibiru and seeing these aliens and all of this have millions of views already.
Yeah.
That those are the things. Just the same way with Flat Earth, right? That it's like the most outlandish and ridiculous shit. And conjecture, too. Yeah. Like, complete conjecture based on nothing.
Yep.
That's what people are like, oh, that's what it is. And it like, the trend is upwards on that.
Yeah.
And I'm not somebody who's like, because there is crazy shit out there. I'm not like the type to poo-poo it and be all like Sam Harris, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, no, there is some weird and mysterious and mystical shit out there, and there always has been. And we shouldn't discount that. But to just go straight to Nibiru because the FBI shuts down a sun observatory. Yeah. So I saw one woman was talking about it was it was clear that the Antichrist has arrived.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
That's the dim age, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really where we are right now. We are in a place where people have shut off their brains, and they are relying on other people or, devices. They do all their thinking through Google. Literally, people don't think about things. They don't try to solve problems themselves. They have lost the ability to use logic.
Or did they ever have the ability to use logic? That's the question. I mean, a formal logic, to actually be able to like sit and like logically step by step work through something, that's not taught in school.
Not anymore, no. It used to be.
Mm-hmm. Formal logic, sure. Yeah.
You know, it used to be an important thing, and it's not anymore. You know, and honestly, it's the fault of the government, but it has really hurt people's ability to differentiate, you know, complete trash from things that are super weird and should be investigated, but aren't being investigated. So we actually have two sides of it, right? You've got the ultra skeptical, you know, nothing weird ever happens. And then you have
those guys are just wrong.
They're just wrong. I mean, they're as wrong as the ultra believers who say that literally everything is weird.
Right.
You know, and Nibiru is coming because we shut down a solar observatory. It's more likely Chinese spies. Now, rewind, you know, 50 years, and it's like, we shut down the solar observatory. Must be spies.
Must be spies, right.
That would have been the first assumption.
That would have been the first thing, yeah.
Now, it's freaking aliens and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, if there was a solar flare coming, there are enough other solar observatories around.
Exactly.
You know, and honestly, warning us isn't going to do any good.
No.
I mean, you know, they can tell us, they can not tell us. Right. The effect is going to be the same.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
So, yeah, I think that keeping an open mind, but doing your own critical thinking about things and doing some experiments and checking things out for yourself and you know, reading through, like, you know, I'll go to, you know, published papers all the time, you know, look through them. There is, thankfully, there is kind of a resurgence of people going through the process and publishing work that wouldn't have been as publishable 10 years ago.
Right.
You know,
right.
And I think there was this huge suppression of, you know, thinking differently for a long time. So hopefully that is easing up a bit, and, you know, scientists are going to be allowed to ask questions, because some of the greatest scientists have asked some amazing questions that still don't have answers, and, you know, conjecturizing and theorizing about what could this mean is important. You know, some people may say it's not scientific, but I think that an overly restrictive definition of scientific prevents a lot of people from using their imagination and actually getting to solutions that, you know, the greats, like you look at Tesla, you look at Einstein, without their imagination and figuring out, like, okay, I'm not going to accept the current paradigm. I'm going to think about it differently, and I'm going to come up with something new. And they did, and it is still doable today. And it does look like at least a little bit of that friction that was in place for so long, where people couldn't publish anything that was on the edges. You know, maybe that's lightening up a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe it'll. But I mean,
I think the problem though is that anybody can publish anything, and I think we are, in our culture, we want to be entertained.
Oh,
right?
sure, yeah.
And our attention spans have become so short, and the level of stimulation that we need for most people, and for the most part, the level of stimulation that we need in order to keep our attention, for the most part, is so high.
Yeah.
That, you know, Planet Nibiru and never mind, like, the algorithms as well. You know, because you start watching, and it was funny. Like, I was like, oh, what are people saying about this thing? And then all of a sudden, my YouTube feed was just inundated. Right? Yeah. And it was like, one thing. And to someone who doesn't, which is most people, who doesn't really understand that there is an algorithm, and who doesn't really understand that, like, no, you really are being manipulated.
Yeah.
And it's not even. I'm not even saying that in a conspiracy theory way. I'm saying that in a way of YouTube's business model is to sell your eyeballs,
right,
to advertisers.
Yeah.
The advertisers pay. YouTube sells your eyeballs to them. Therefore, YouTube's entire business model is, how do we get your eyeballs 4 more minutes?
Yeah. And think about this. Like I get frustrated with my YouTube feed because, so I mostly look at YouTube through my Roku app. And so I pull it up on the big screen and it'll give me like row after row after row after row of videos and that are all like customized recommendations for me.
Right for you. Yeah.
And it really depends on the last like 4 or 5 videos that I've watched. It's not going to give me anything that I watched 6 months ago.
No, but that may be exactly what you want.
But it's not, because I want more variety.
Gotcha.
So the algorithm doesn't work for me. But
I'm saying what you may want is something that you were into 6 months ago.
Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, no, that's the most frustrating part for me is that like sometimes I'll run across like, so for instance, I ran across this video and I just found this particular guy, this YouTuber. I just was like, wow, he's fantastic, great storyteller, interesting. I think the channel is Locked Up 23-1, but it's this guy. I guess he was in the penitentiary in Virginia, but he's just kind of like gregarious, like interesting guy, but also like articulate, great storyteller. But he's got that like hood storytelling style. I just really, it's very like kind of folksy in Virginia, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And
does he have like a flow to it kind of thing? Like it's almost like a musical flow?
Very much so. I mean,
Awesome.
and I think that he's a music producer, but one of the things so he's constantly doing these little videos like how to fight in prison, like how to like how to like who are the people that to fear, who are the people to respect, and it's just like the way that he tells these stories, these things that he saw, like he's just a great storyteller. So
how to fight in prison, never go to prison.
Right. Yeah, so I mean he's got I don't know, he's got a couple 100,000 subscribers, and I watched like 3 videos. And after watching those 3, just because I was like, wow, this is, it was like on a Saturday or something. And it's just Saturday afternoon. I came across this and I was like, wow, this is interesting. And I watched like 3 of these videos. He's telling these great stories, man. He's just a great storyteller. And then all of a sudden my feed was just all prison stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't even, of other YouTubers, and the whole feed.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole thing.
And think about this, like, if I scroll through every video in my entire feed, it's got to be 300 videos. Right. I mean, it's like 300 videos.
Well, it'll keep going.
Yeah. Well, so mine actually, I get down so far, and then it's got like a big button that says back to top.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it does have a limit, at least on the Roku, but it's got to be at least 300 videos, maybe more.
Right.
And so I will regularly go all the way through and not find a single thing that I actually am interested in watching. But you got to realize 300 videos, right? The last statistic that I saw, and this has got to be outdated. I mean, it's got to be way more than this now. But the last statistic that I actually saw was that an hour of YouTube video is uploaded every second. And it's got to be more than that by now, because this is at least a year old. But if you think about it from that perspective, how much video could you actually consume, or can anybody actually consume? I'm imagining there are...
you could consume 24 hours in a day, but I mean, that's not... I think that there are people out there on the high end who are consuming, probably the type of people who have like stuff running in the background while they're at work and whatnot, who are and then maybe watch YouTube. There are probably people who are consuming 15 hours worth of YouTube content a day. I think there are probably people out there doing that.
And they're consuming it in real time, unless they are actually using the play at 1.25 speed or 1.5 speed or whatever.
But probably it's consumed in real time, probably.
Yeah. So optimally, if you're actually able to consume, a 2x video and it's 10 minutes long, so you watch it for 5 minutes, you've gotten the entire video, you've absorbed a tenth of it, and but during that time, all these hours and hours of other videos have been uploaded, and you may never see them. There's stuff on YouTube that no human being will ever see.
Well, I think the dangerous part about it is it's the confirmation bias part, to where if you're consuming this 15 hours of YouTube a day and you are primarily consuming your consumption pattern is primarily based upon the suggestions that are coming from out of the algorithm.
Right.
That what you perceive to be valuable or important in the world. Like, I think it gets to your point of, like, there's this huge stew of content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's an ocean of content, but, like, it's almost like someone has just taken a tube
Mm-hmm.
and, like, put it down into the ocean. So now there's an entire ocean, but there's just this tube, and that's what the algorithm has for you.
Yep.
And you jump in that tube and you go down, and because you're getting further and further and deeper, you're like, wow, this ocean is deep. It goes deep, man. It goes, wow, I'm down the rabbit hole, right? I went down a YouTube rabbit hole. But that's the whole thing. It is this pipe that's been stuck down in the middle of the ocean. You're going down the pipe, and you get the impression that you're delving and digging into what's on YouTube. You're not.
No,
You're not any more than you're experiencing the ocean when you're inside this pipe that goes all the way down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can no more experience the ocean by hanging out on, Hampton Beach,
right? Exactly,
or Myrtle Beach or wherever. Then you can experience YouTube by just surfing videos the way that even an expert consumer,
Mm-hmm.
They're still not going to be sampling everything that it has to offer. But then you expand that beyond YouTube to the internet. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Same thing.
So then there's this entire other bigger ocean outside the ocean that you're already in. And, then beyond that is, the dark web. And,
Mm-hmm.
the dark web is many, many times as large
Mm-hmm.
as the internet. So if you're looking at the amount of information that's stored out there that humans can't access. I mean, it's not just a matter of, I looked up a thing on Wikipedia. Great. Is it possible for you to read all the things on Wikipedia? No. I mean, it's being written faster than you could ever read it.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
I think that actually is sort of a perfect segue to the idea of the moon, right? So here's
Sure.
this thing that through all of humanity cannot be ignored, right? Like no human being throughout all of history could have ignored this. We've all looked at it.
I may have a surprise for you then.
You've never seen the moon?
Oh, no, I have.
Oh, okay.
For sure.
There's somebody who hasn't seen the moon?
Maybe.
Okay, we're gonna talk about that. So I'm going to go with the thesis of, while there may be exceptions, I'm gonna go with, as a general rule.
Sure. Yeah.
As a general rule, human beings have been looking at this. Let's just say human beings as a species have been looking at this thing in the sky
For a long time.
for a long time,
I'll buy that.
but accessing it, getting to it. Only a very few human beings have spent a very short amount of time in a very small region of this thing that has been a focal point
Yeah.
of human consciousness, which is so important to the functioning of the planet, which governs our lives. Some might say that women are on a lunar cycle. The menstrual cycle it certainly is synced up with the moon, whether or not it's a full lunar cycle. Our calendar, the months are based on the moon, obviously. So many, the tides, so many things. And it's interesting to me that with all the things that we could have our attention on, with all of the things that you would think human beings, like if you were an outside alien looking in, and you were like, what do you think that these exploratory creatures would be interested in doing? You would think that the moon would be very high on that list.
Sure.
Just looking at our history, looking at how we explore and all of that, you would think the moon would be very high on that list.
Mm-hmm.
It appears that it is not.
Not anymore.
I'm interested in exploring that and all of the other weird things about the moon. But that one in particular, so many people have the question, why have we not been back to the moon? That one seems like that's a question I've been asking since a child, and I think most kids ask it like, why are we not back on them? This doesn't make any sense. We went. Why are we not there? Why are we not back?
I will answer that question with a quote from one of my favorite movies. That's not a moon. It's a space station.
Okay, let's talk. That's from Star Wars,
Indeed.
but let's talk about that, because I had prefaced this by saying that I met some guys at DEF CON in Vegas, maybe a couple years ago, and we ended up just hanging out, talking, got dinner, and was like, one of them was talking to me about the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Some things that he said that were like, at the time that he said them, I thought that it was particularly notable. Something like, the moon doesn't spin on its axis. It actually does, very slowly.
It does. It's just in sync with the Earth.
It's in sync with the Earth, and
which is weird all on its own.
Well, I thought I've heard that was normal for satellites. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's not normal for moons. But that it's not something that's so like crazy. But what he did tell me.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me a few things. One of the things that he said, and I've seen some. I went and I looked, and there is some corroborating stories of this. Was that I forget which Apollo mission it was. It may have been the first one. It was Apollo 11 that was the first one to land.
Mm-hmm.
I think when they took off, they fired something back at the moon, like a sounding device, because they wanted to get like depth or something like that.
Right.
And that when it hit, the moon rang like a bell.
Yes, for 30 minutes.
For 30 minutes.
Yep. And that was the first test.
See, when he told me that, I was like, that was the point where I was like, oh, there's something else going on. Also, the fact that when they expected that the dust was going to be significantly deep on the moon, but yet it wasn't.
Right. And if you recall, that's why they had those gigantic, like, saucer-shaped landing gear, because they really thought it was going to be like, landing like on snow or something, so they wanted this, wide surface area to spread out the weight of the lunar module so it didn't sink too far into that dust, which had to be like feet thick.
You would think it would be hundreds or thousands of feet deep, right?
But no, it's like that, like inches.
And so that was, to answer the questions about why have we not been back, like what's going on there?
It's interesting because let's start by looking at what's been said about the moon by some people you might recognize. So these first two quotes are from the same person. If you want to guess, you can guess. Otherwise, I'll just tell you. The first quote, "It's too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been effected and the moon then having taken up a nearly circular orbit around our Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible."
Is it a modern person?
Semi-modern.
Is that Isaac Newton?
It's Isaac Asimov.
Isaac Asimov. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Very good.
Next one from him. "We cannot help but come to the conclusion that the moon by rights ought not be there. The fact that it is one of those strokes of luck almost too good to accept." The stroke of luck part, referring back to your points about without the moon, like a lot of our environment wouldn't operate the way it does.
Well, it knocked off a whole bunch of asteroids in the early days.
That's one theory, right?
Well, I mean, it's pockmarked, so you know that it's been hit by asteroids.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I mean...
it's been hit by stuff.
It's been hit by stuff.
Yeah. Asteroids, yeah, sure. I mean, it is certainly not protected by, the same density of atmosphere and magnetic field that we have here on Earth. We still get hit by stuff. And we have thousands and thousands of little tiny things entering our atmosphere
all the time.
Every day. The moon does not have the same protection that we do, so it gets impacted. There are a ton of impact craters. But there are also other things on the moon that are not impact craters. And it's interesting to take a look at those things And, what people would call real scientists are taking a look at those things and trying to figure out, like, what would cause this? Like, is there a natural process that we understand that would cause...
Can you give an example of something, one of these things?
So, actually, if I take 2 seconds here.
Go ahead.
I will go
Take
back
your time.
to the notes that I didn't bring to the show.
Oh, there's the first time for everything.
I know, right?
Unlucky number 13. This is show 13, by the way.
This is show 13.
Yes.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
Good thing nobody's triskaidekaphobic.
No, it's my lucky number, actually. Believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, it was my number. I always wore it in sports when I could. It's popular. People do. The contrarians do like it. So, but no, it's a lucky number for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm into it. I'm into the number 13. It's Friday and it's the 13th show. I was thinking about that today. It's not Friday the 13th, but it is Friday and the 13th show. So I don't know. It's kind of got a Friday the 13th thing. So it's kind of the Knights Templar sort of situation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what do we got? You got something?
For some reason, my phone is not opening the PDF. There was a paper that was actually published that talked about these anomalies that they did spot on the moon, and they thought that they were potentially of artificial origin because they don't look natural. They don't, like, nature tends not to have straight lines, right angles, stuff like that. And this particular feature on the moon, it actually looks like, imagine if you had a giant concrete hot dog bun that was made out of all right angles. And It goes, like, angled down into the moon's surface. So it literally looks like some giant, like, U-shaped tunnel, like, going down into the moon. And this is...
so it could be either a launching or landing sort of scenario?
Potentially. And this is, high-res, modern photos. This isn't some blurry thing from the 60s. These are modern photos. Scientists who are looking at this and going, we don't know what it is. They're not saying it's aliens,
but it's aliens.
Could be, right? Could be aliens. And I think that's where, this whole dim age thing comes into it, is that our first thought shouldn't be, ooh, look at that weird shape, must be aliens. It's like, look at that weird shape, what else can we learn about it?
Yeah,
right?
what is that?
Yeah, what is that? Could that be some kind of weird volcanic thing from 50 million years ago? Maybe, I don't know. Looks pretty weird. Until I don't know how much we would actually be able to analyze it without physically going back and looking at it. And there are a lot of reasons, a lot of them, conspiratorial about why we've not been back.
Well, do you believe that first off, because there are going to be some people who are like, we never went to the moon. What do you think about that idea that, no, actually, we never went to the moon?
I think that the people that think we never went to the moon arrived at that conclusion based on how that whole thing was set up, right? Because it was a massive PR effort.
Yes.
And they practiced and they had lines and they rehearsed, like, the hopping down off the ladder. And, like, that entire scene was very well rehearsed. And so for somebody to make the, logical leap from, okay, they've been doing this on a movie set, they've rehearsed their lines, they know exactly what's going to happen, to, well, did we actually do it, or did we just use some movie footage? I don't blame them, honestly. Now, you can actually take a, backyard telescope and look, and you can see stuff that we've left there. How'd it get there?
Right.
Well, if you're super conspiratorial, you'll say, well, we adjusted the hologram. So that way, because it's a holographic moon,
right.
So obviously we've made some adjustments. I actually do think we physically visited the moon. I think that there is junk that we left there.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that there is a lot of other very, very weird stuff that might be aliens, might not be aliens, might be something we have no comprehension of. But there is weird stuff around the moon.
See, so there is a line of thinking that resonates with me. And the reason that it resonates is because of what was going on the Russian side that we sort of know about in terms of the propagandistic miscommunication about the Russian space program. So, for instance, they have this narrative about Laika, the space dog, that the dog survived and starved to death up there or something like that.
Yep.
But the dog died really within 25 minutes or something like that. It was very, very quick. They did get a dog up there, but the dog died either on the launch or whatever.
Yep.
And then there's these Italian brothers who supposedly captured radio signals that were in Russian.
The first female cosmonaut.
Right. All of that, which I actually believe that the Russians at that time would have sent up a female, because you have to go back to the time that the thing about the space race was socialism versus, capitalism per se, but it was two cultures, two political ideologies facing off, trying to say it was really a demonstration for the rest of the people of the world. It was these two empires that were playing the hearts and minds to say, follow us because look at what we can do. There were a lot of these this played out all throughout. That's what the Cold War was. I mean, look, it's perfectly embodied sort of at the end of the Cold War, almost parodied in Rocky IV, for instance.
Oh my God.
Right? That's
Ivan Drago.
I
must break you.
But there's the scene, the montage, of course, where it's Ivan Drago and the super technological going, and Rocky up in the mountains going through the snow. He's lifting logs and doing and it's this, it is an embodiment of this mimetic battle that had been going on for so long. And the idea that there's a very good chance that Yuri Gagarin was not the first cosmonaut to be sent up, but was just the first cosmonaut to survive and come back, right? And that there had been, the female one who burns up. There's another one who it sounds like just sort of is up there and lost in space, drifts off. And these guys, and they had they made recordings of these things, that they were picking up these radio signals. So, the thought that maybe it doesn't have to be either or, that maybe it's they really did shoot all this stuff in a studio because they were scared that they were going to send these guys up and they were going to die.
They were terrified of that.
And that they would lose the mimetic battle.
Yeah.
Because their job was to not just go to the moon and these guys die in front of everybody.
Literally the entire world.
Because then what? Then you lose. Then communism wins.
Yep.
And so much of the Cold War was about who can control the narrative. Not so much. All of it. Because the whole thing that you were trying to do was the Soviets were trying to make sure that their people didn't turn to communism, turn to capitalism. And the Americans were trying to make sure that their people didn't turn to socialism. And it looks like neither side ended up winning. If you look at what's going on today, neither side won that one. You know what I mean? It's and it's almost, there's this teeter-totter battle, but I do think we went to the moon.
I do too.
I'm not altogether sure that the footage we have of, and the whole Neil Armstrong thing and all of that, I'm not altogether sure that's taking place on the moon. But I do think that we went to the moon.
Yes.
I don't think we may not have actually seen any pictures of what's actually on the moon.
So
that's where I stand with it.
We could, I mean, in theory.
As a former reality TV star, let me just put that out there, right? So that does inform me in that regard.
Well, I will say that there certainly have been a lot of concerns raised about certain things that appear to happen during the moonwalk, like the flag waving in the breeze.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which was just hand waved, like, oh, not a big deal, and the the hardcore people will say, NASA explained it, blah blah blah, but really, like, I'm looking at this going, that there's no wind on the moon. Come on,
right?
There are reflections, there are things that, are showing up in the visors that look like stage lights. So maybe, right? Maybe it was that we sent men to the moon and they did leave stuff behind and they did collect moon rocks and they did all those things. But maybe all of that was supplemented by
that's what I'm saying.
Hollywood visuals.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because that's what the American public needed.
Yes.
So we had this, young president who said, by the end of this decade, we will go to the moon. Mm-hmm. And, by God, we went to the moon. And the proof is all over the television. And you got Walter Cronkite sitting there, man on the moon. And, it could not have been more perfect. More things go wrong.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that, and there's some things about is it the Van Allen belt, the radiation belt?
Yeah.
Traveling through that. The moon may have been a suicide mission, and they may have known it the whole time because they didn't have great radiation shielding.
No.
And I think we still may not have the requisite radiation shielding. That's why the SpaceX thing is interesting. We may not have the requisite radiation shielding to do it. So it may have been that the moon was a suicide mission.
I understand. My understanding of that whole situation was that everybody involved thought that they were all going to die and it was worth the risk.
Right. This is what I'm saying.
Yep.
I think that's where NASA was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were very much about, look, like, it's seriously dangerous. People are going to die. But the problem is that's not going to work for the American public.
Right.
And this is they're coming into the age of public relations. Edward Bernays is around at the time. He's in his prime at the time. They've gotten out of World War II. They understand propaganda. The Russians are doing their thing. The Americans are doing their thing. Heavy propaganda, PR. They had been staging things. They learned to do that in World War II, where they would stage these news, the newsreel, our boys in the Pacific going and here's this little monkey on his shoulder and blah, blah. That was the beginning of what has now turned into reality TV. We know how to do these things now.
What was the last war we actually generally feel good about? World War II.
Yeah. And that was the reason why, because the level of propaganda.
Right. We genuinely felt like we were fighting against evil, right? We were fighting Nazis. So we sent our young men and women over there, well, mostly men, to go fight the Nazis. And they fought the Nazis, and, Captain America was there, yay. There was...
Well, Captain America, that whole thing, the comic book thing, the first Superman... He's I think the very first Superman, he punches Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, Captain America did the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, that's where all of this started. This is where they were cutting their teeth. But that was Edward Bernays writing the book Propaganda. Before that, everybody was picking these ideas up. And that was the beginning of the advertising industry.
Yep.
Madison Avenue. It was the beginning of all of this. And so I can't see a scenario where there isn't I can't see a scenario where whoever is in charge of doing this PR doesn't at least float the idea of, what if we don't actually film anything on the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can do the moon missions, but what if we pre-shoot something?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what we show to do the American people really need to see? Do we need to even just the, I mean, this is another thing that it's weird that people never talk about this, but I mean, I've been doing live broadcasts for 20 years now. And I mean, now it's easy, right? Like, I flip up my laptop, I got all the gear, blah, just go. We just go.
Yeah,
we can do a live broadcast, but it's like doing live broadcast is fucking hard.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a live broadcast from the moon?
Yeah. Yeah, with the best 1960s technology you have available.
From the moon.
Yeah.
Fuck no, you didn't. Fuck no, you didn't. And I think that is really, that's what this is really all about, is it? And that's where the skeptic in me is like, oh, that's the answer. To where it's like, no, they could go to the moon, but they couldn't. Doing a live broadcast from the moon
Of video
is almost as hard as going to the moon itself.
Yeah.
And if I'm a NASA engineer, I'm like, listen, we can, and I'm sure I could imagine the people at NASA sitting there and being like, look, we can go to the moon. We're pretty sure we can do that. But this Hollywood TV shit, you want us to not just go to the moon,
mm-hmm.
which is already hard. You need us to do the most technically advanced television broadcast that has ever happened in the history of television.
Yeah.
To slam all of that extra gear that we're going to need just for your dumbass broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Put all of that in there. That's going to add extra weight to the payload.
Yeah.
It's going to be all of these extra things. It's an extra point of failure.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to put our astronauts' lives at risk. You're going to put our astronauts' lives at risk. They're already risking their lives. Now you're going to put them even more at risk so that you can get some good shot, which you probably won't even get anyway.
Yep.
Because there's almost no chance that we're going to be able to get a clean signal.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that had to happen. And so then they're like, well, okay, but we got to show the American people. If we don't show them something, this is not going to work. And then it's like, somebody had to say, well, why don't we just make a movie of it and just show people? Somebody had to say that.
Yeah, and they were preparing for that, because the practice video still survives. I mean, you can still see, they had the suits on. They were climbing down the ladder onto the moon. It was a whole Hollywood set thing. Like, all of it was rehearsed and prepared well in advance. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. Like, and I hadn't thought about this before, but you're literally making the choice between, 50, 100 pounds worth of video equipment.
Oh, more than that at that time. Are you kidding?
Yeah. And
what is this? 69. 1969. You know how heavy a television camera was at that time?
No, I know how heavy a television was at that time, but not a camera.
The cameras were like, a television camera was huge.
Yeah.
Like, a television camera could not be carried. It would have to be set on something.
Oh, yeah, because you watch the old talk shows, like the...
exactly.
It's like these big, like...
That's what they would have to do that.
Wow. Yeah, there was no such thing as portable or miniaturized. There was no miniaturization.
Fuck no. In the 60s?
So transistors were actually new, right? Or were they even used? Were transistors even used at that time?
Probably like in some, but not on mission critical stuff. They probably had vacuum. I'm sure it was vacuums, all vacuum tubes.
That's freaking crazy. So you're literally making the choice between who knows how many pounds of television equipment, audio equipment, and those really ridiculous giant like still cameras that they would wear on their chests.
Huge.
In place of oxygen, safety
Food,
equipment,
safety gear.
Yeah,
all
like,
that.
Really, like we are going to carry less freaking oxygen, so we can have a 100-pound piece of equipment.
Exactly.
Wow.
I hadn't even thought about it until this conversation. Yeah. But it makes perfect sense.
That's why these conversations are so good, man.
But it makes perfect sense to where it's like, look, so we know exactly how much payload we can take up there.
Oh, yeah.
We know down to the ounce.
Yeah.
We've calculated this shit.
And they plan down to the ounce.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, no, we're not going to. I could see the director of NASA being like, no,
take your TV shit and shove it up your ass.
There you go. Yeah.
The real director of NASA at the time would have said that.
Yeah, then we're not going.
Yeah.
Then we're fucking not going.
Yep.
We're not taking shit up there. They've got a radio to radio back to us with voice. And besides that, that's it, fellas.
Yeah. And maybe that's the only part that we actually got. We got the radio transmission. Maybe that's all.
They probably had a still camera.
Well, they did have the still cameras, but
and that's probably it.
It's awfully weird, and people have brought this up before, how incredible and perfectly in focus and professionally done those chest-mounted cameras,
dude.
It's weirdly perfect.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. It would not have been that. I mean,
and you're in a freaking giant spacesuit where you can't really even move.
No, there's but the problem is, once you go down that road, you can't go back. So it's like, you go down that road, you make the little produced piece, you tell everybody, this was it. You can't go back then. You can't, maybe 50 years from, basically everybody's got to die.
Yeah.
Everybody who was involved has to die in order for it to come out that like, okay, no, we actually, and I think that that's much more likely that it's like, look, no, we went to the moon. We went, we were there, checked it out, we did the thing, we brought the shit back. Maybe we went a lot more times than we said we went. Maybe we did. But we also shot this bullshit and we gave it because really, honestly, do you really need to, like, honestly, who are you, Joe Sixpack? Who are you really, seriously, that you deserve? I think that's also the other thing. It's the entitlement, right? The people who are like, oh, that's fake. And it's like, you know what, motherfucker? Yes, it is fake. Yeah, because why do you deserve? Why do you deserve to see the picture? What did you do to help anybody get to the moon?
Yeah.
You didn't even pay taxes. You weren't even alive at the time or paying taxes at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And honestly, like this is the first viable theory that actually allows all the astronauts to tell the truth, which is they said they went. Yeah. And I believe they went.
There you go.
And we also have this supplemental footage provided by Hollywood or whatever, that tells a story that resonates with the people that are watching on television, because this is the new age of television, right? So you've got all this propaganda being distributed by movie theaters during World War II.
That's right.
Then you have the 50s, right? In the 50s, so much prosperity, and everybody had, a house and a car and, 2 chickens for dinner and whatever else. And they started buying televisions.
Yep.
And because they had extra money, because we had just come off of winning this righteous war where we were on the right side and we were the good guys and we defeated the bad guys. And now we're in the 50s and everybody's doing great economically. And, it's like the American dream is happening, people buy televisions, and then in the 60s, things start going sideways. We start fighting a war that isn't quite as clear cut, and we have the
communists are encroaching,
and we have the communists, and we have that whole fear thing that's happening. And that the 60s were a very traumatic time, for the country. So what do we do to bring us back to our post-war victory feeling? We put a man on the moon.
That's it. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is.
Prove it to everybody by showing it to them on their brand new television sets they just bought.
Yeah, it is a very when you think about the level of consumerism that is involved with the man on the moon, and I think that they kept that game really going until the Challenger explosion. Which I remember I was in second grade. Yeah, I believe I was in second or third grade.
Wow.
At the time. And every school child in America, because they had that teacher, Christy McCullough or whatever her name was, on the Challenger, every school child in America a public school child was watching the Challenger launch.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And it blew up in front of all these little kids.
Yep.
Like that was a traumatizing. I think that in and of itself says why doing it the way that we're sort of hypothesizing that they might have done it was actually the right move.
It was absolutely the best choice they had at the time.
Right.
They had no idea if these guys were going to survive a trip to the moon, and if they didn't survive a trip to the moon, they were going to have to fake their way through it until such time that they had enough footage and enough of the, walking down the ladder and doing all the things, and, then there could be some kind of transmission issue or something.
Right, sure.
And then they could burn up on re-entry.
Exactly,
and then,
yeah.
That's the cover story.
Right.
So, and then they'd still be heroes, right?
They'd still be heroes.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, to me, this sounds like if they didn't do this, they're idiots.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, how would that not have been the case? Right. But what's so weird is that it becomes, and I think it's just what it is it's a lack of sophistication, right? It gets us back to the dim age thing.
Yep.
I think that it's a lack of sophistication, even though this... Like, it's a short book. Edward Bernays' book, Propaganda. I mean, people have to understand, so this book broke this guy. He's the reason why women smoke cigarettes, Edward Bernays.
Really?
So he wrote this book, Propaganda. I think I'll look it up. I think he wrote it late 30s, maybe early 30s.
Okay.
No, it was before World War II that he wrote this book, Propaganda. And it was actually used. So basically, what the thesis of the book is that there is a class of individuals whose job it is to direct the goings-on of the world. And the way that you direct the goings-on of the world is through narrative.
Oh,
so
sure,
this is he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud.
Okay.
So he writes this book called Propaganda. That's the thesis in the book. Incidentally, after World War II, because the Nazis in particular had studied his and other people's work in the field and had specifically used the term propaganda in terms of what they were doing, he said, being the intelligent narrative creator that he said, this name propaganda is no longer good. We need to change the name. What can we change the name of this thing that I formerly called propaganda? It just needs a new name that will be clean. Let's call it public relations. PR.
Awesome.
So PR is propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
There is... No, it literally is propaganda. Like the guy who literally wrote the book.
I'm with you.
Edward Bernays. So he He's the reason why women smoke cigarettes. So this is right after World War II. I believe it's Philip Morris, comes the tobacco company.
Yep.
Comes to him and says, okay, look, here's the deal. We need women to start smoking, and we can't figure out how to do this. We are putting them in movies smoking. Women are still not smoking. We're trying to do all of these things. He sped that up, but what he did to start it out was he was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. He organized a few women. He got a few women together I believe it was in New York. Then he called all of the newspapers in New York and said, there's going to be a march of women.
Ooh.
These are like some hardcore kind of feminist type women. This is in the late 40s. Hardcore feminist type women. They are angry. They're out for their rights and all of this. You really need to come. You need to cover this. They're going to be exactly at this location. He sent it out as like a sort of like anonymous, right? Where he's like, they're going to be rabble rousing, so there was not that many women. There was maybe like 8 to 10 women, and they got banners and signs that were that said "Torches of Freedom." Torches of Freedom. It was like this idea of like women's rights and women can do. This was this sort of emerging movement after the war. Women had been working and doing all of this thing. So this is like he's playing on this sort of early feminist sentiment.
Okay.
Right? So, and they're smoking. So it's Torches of Freedom.
Nice.
So they're going to smoke because this is something that only men did.
Yeah.
No, we can do it too. Women can do it too. What's crazy about this? So this gets picked up. It gets put into the New York newspapers, which then, of course, travel out.
Mm-hmm.
Over the succeeding weeks. This is the only one that he does. Over the succeeding weeks, all throughout the country, there are all of these Torches of Freedom marches that are occurring, where women are going out on their own. You know, if this doesn't sound familiar to the Me Too movement and the things that are going at Black Lives Matter and the whole nine, yeah, this is the dude who invented this whole shit. And within 3 years, women were even with men in terms of smoking cigarettes. It had been like 80-20. It went to 50-50, and the profits were crazy for Philip Morris. So, but he did many, many, many of these propaganda actions. Like, this dude was the master. He was the master of. When he was old. There's some. You can go and look up interviews of him. Edward Bernays. It's Bernays. There's interviews of him talking about doing this, having done this whole thing. I don't see how. I mean, at that time was the height of it because they had control, especially when it came to TV.
Yeah,
like the government was in heavy control, and the networks were playing along. I mean, the networks had it was an oligopoly.
Yeah, there were 3 networks.
That's what I'm saying.
That was it.
They were playing ball. Like, it was like, man, we'll compete with each other, but shit, the government wants to play this little game. We'll play the game.
Yeah. And I'm assuming the FCC existed at the time.
Yeah, of course it did.
They already had their hooks in as far as, if the government wants to say something, you're going to give us the airtime for free. Don't even ask questions. I mean.
Yeah, because you're a licensee. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that this is, we're coming into a new time in media now. I don't know whether it's better. I don't know whether it's worse. I think that there's trade-offs in everything, as Thomas Sowell says, right? In economics, there's no solutions. There's only trade-offs. And I think that there was some sort of expectation, and I had this expectation, but I was also young when the internet was new, so there was also a level of naivete. I think everybody was naive in this
I
way.
love the way you said that, because it really was much like an ancient elf saying that, when I was young, the galaxy was new, or the world was new, or something. And I'm just like, that's hilarious. I mean, when you were young, the internet was new.
But it's true.
And, kids are going to look at you like, wow, you're old.
Novelty theory, dude. Time is speeding up. Time is speeding up, right? Never mind Bitcoin. I was old when Bitcoin was new. Come on, let's be real about that one, right? So, there was this idea, and I guess it was naive. A lot of it was naivete, I'm sure. But there's always this naivete about Bitcoin too that I try to prevent myself from having, and the conflicts make that easy to break the naivete. But the idea was sort of like, and maybe it was true with cable too at first, right? I think that this was where the same sort of naivete that if you go back and look at sort of those original MTV, the Moon Man and all of that.
Yeah.
Even back to the early days of VH1, even CNN in the early days, this idea that, hey, we're out here in this weird space where there are no rules, and we're going to make this new, creative, crazy, cool thing. I want my MTV. That had the feeling the way that the internet did when it was new. And the idea is always, like, we're going to now not play by those rules. We're now not going to be. It's the same thing with MySpace. We're going to be countercultural. We're going to have ideas that are new and that go against the grain. And it's like, yes, but don't imagine that will last very long.
Right.
Like, yes, you will, but don't imagine that doesn't also sort of ossify and you turn into the establishment eventually.
Oh, MTV did right away. I mean, it was long.
Very soon.
Yeah. I mean, they were, not very long down that road. They became very authoritarian and controlling of, who was being broadcast, because they quickly realized the value that they brought to that medium. So it's like there was one only option. MTV, believe it or not, folks, they actually showed videos at the time. And I should probably explain, videos is a synchronized display of music and imagery. For those of you,
they still have them.
They still have videos.
They still have music videos.
Oh, okay, good.
People still do music videos, but it's a lot cheaper to do a music video now. The music videos that they were doing at the time was like, to do a music video, I mean, and you go back to some epic. I mean, you go back to like the epic videos like Michael Jackson, like the Thriller.
Oh my God, that was like a movie. Yeah.
People were like,
it was incredible.
What is happening here?
Yeah.
They had never seen anything like this, right? Yeah. Now it's so cheap to make something like that. Back then they were still shooting on film.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have a real director.
We were actually talking about this in relation to porn. Like, totally
different topic. When it was in theaters.
Right. You would actually go to a theater and you would watch a pornographic film that had been shot on film.
Well, this is the whole Boogie Nights thing.
Yeah, with actual actors,
right.
Yeah. And then it all went to, digital or video and then digital and then, ruined it. But,
And now it's like just somebody with a webcam. But that's as the technology democratizes.
Yes.
And I think that's with each level of democratization, what we're fundamentally trying to get down to is, or where it eventually goes down to is, it goes down to the individual, right? Like technology always democratizes. And I think that we're seeing, if SpaceX is able to pull this thing off with this, what's the guy's last name? It's a Japanese designer, Meizumo, I think that might be his. I might be really fucking this up, and that would be absolutely terrible. But he's a billionaire,
I did not recognize his name, so you were not alone in this.
Okay, so he's a billionaire. I'm forgetting what the clothing line that he started is, but it's kind of a Japanese, not like haute couture line, but like the type of thing that you could buy in department stores, but still like very well respected, multi-billionaire. And
Cool.
he's gonna select like 6 to 8 artists of different types of art,
Okay.
and they're gonna go with him because he
Wow.
wants them to make something, to be inspired and
Sure.
do something afterwards. And he had a really interesting thing where he was like, I haven't chosen the people, but if I contact you, please don't say no. Which is kind of cool because that's exactly what my agent said to me when he was like, Vin, you're on the show, don't say no. Very interesting, like the call to adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't turn it down. If you're
Right.
an artist, well, if you're a good artist, you always turn it down at first. Right, and then then you're like dragged into it. So it's going to be interesting to see. I hope that they can pull this off because I think it's fantastic. But this democratization down to the individual, the problem that we have now is what happens when you democratize down to the individual and then that becomes the corrupt establishment. Because then you're talking about the
Yeah.
individual is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can no longer point to some external force, the networks, the FCC, which was a sort of Howard Stern's whole shtick,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then he went to satellite,
Yep.
and then that kind of became the establishment, and then it kind of became boring.
Yeah. I haven't listened to Howard in many, many years.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's boring. So we're seeing this with YouTube because I have followed, several interesting creators who are doing interesting things. And as their channels grew and as they further monetized them and they took on sponsors and, it went from, this one dude did a channel called The King of Random. And I don't know if you've ever seen this, but he did like really cool stuff. Like, here's how to make flaming things and here's how to make gunpowder. And,
That's awesome.
And he was like producing fairly high quality videos,
That's awesome.
and
I
he
love
had
that.
good presentation skills. And so you'd get like, 12 to 15 minutes of him doing this super awesome thing where he like would pour like molten glass onto dry ice just to see what happens. And it was great because he apparently had enough money to buy some of these raw materials
Right, sure.
and do some weird experiments. But as the channel grew and he eventually got to 10 million subscribers, which is huge.
It's huge.
And that is a significant piece of income, honestly.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you're making
Yeah,
a lot
sure.
of money at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
And so he actually had to come out with a video, and he's like, because he hadn't been, some other guy had actually taken over and started doing the main presenting role.
Oh, wow.
Like, he brought a guy in, like,
So
as
you
an
like
assistant.
hired somebody.
He did. Well, this is where it gets weird. So he hired like this on camera. He hired this guy to come in as his assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually he didn't make any more videos. The assistant was actually making all the videos as the main presenter.
Interesting.
So then, like months later, he's like, okay, where have I been, folks? And he just goes through this like 20-minute explanation of how the channel, like he started it by himself, for himself, just doing random stuff that he likes to do. And it grew and grew and grew. And he's like, at some point I needed help. And so I hired on like this person to do this. And I had a lawyer for that. And I had an agent for that. And I had this and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And somebody to deal with,
Yep.
products and blah, blah.
Yep.
It became like this 20-person team. So now he's running a business
Yep.
to make YouTube videos.
Well, this is Alex Jones. This is
Yeah.
the story of Alex Jones.
Yeah. And so the purity of what he was doing originally, like today, that channel would never release a video called How to Make Gunpowder at Home.
Yeah,
wouldn't.
see, there's something very. This is what I realized with, and one of the reasons why I stopped doing the Vin Armani show was, and it may have started today. The next bull market, I realized that the next bull market was, dude, Ripple's up 60% today.
Ooh.
It overtook Ethereum.
I saw your post
Number
on that.
2 in
Yeah.
market cap.
Wow.
Bitcoin Cash is up almost 20%. Yeah, it's crazy.
Excellent.
So
Glad I held on to that.
well, it's still way down over where it was a few months, towards spring or whatever. But I think this could be the beginning. People have been waiting for a bull signal, so it's like I think this could be the beginning of the bull market. I think all the sellers have capitulated, which is great. But I saw that coming, and there's this weird thing about understanding that if you're lucky, and I've sort of like hinted at this about this particular show as well, like although this show is a much nicer slow burn, so that's nice, and it's really great company, and I enjoy doing this, but at a certain point the project itself takes on this life of its own.
Right.
And that's that's the trap. The trap is that it stops being about what it initially was about, and it starts being about like, oh, well, I've got this staff of people, and they all have families, and I care about them.
Starts being about Nick Hawk, keyless handcuffs.
Well, that was very very true of Gigolos. I will say that and I know that you've been binge watching.
Oh, dude,
Gigolos.
5.5 seasons, and there are 6 seasons in total. We made it through 5.5 since last Saturday. So
no, that's what people do.
Phenomenal.
You get into
Love it.
People and it's weird. It's hard to explain to people, and what you just find yourself saying is like, look, you just have to watch it.
Yeah.
Like, just watch a few episodes. You're gonna be hooked. You don't think that you're gonna be hooked.
No, you go into it thinking it's going to be silly and stupid, and then you realize, ooh, like, this is actually, like, okay, set aside the titillation aspect, right? Like, okay, you're going to see some boobies. Get over it, all right? This is really good storytelling.
You know what's interesting about that is that I have heard this time and time and time again from people who are fans of the show, that they're like, oh, I just fast forward through all the sex. I mean, I'll go up to of course, the conversation on the date and the setup and what's going on. But the actual, like, physical banging,
Yeah.
which is in the show Gigolos, that's part of the show.
It's done tastefully. I mean, I will say.
Yeah, and it's short. It's a very short period of amount of the show, but it's there. And it's not really...
I mean, it's proportional. You know?
Yeah, oh, that's funny. It's not the size of the ship; it's the motion of the ocean.
That's right.
No, it's not short. I'm saying that the length of time that
it's on camera,
that there is sex on camera, but in some, there are some scenes where it is actually important to the narrative.
Yeah.
But and it's also, I think in some ways it's also there as the middle finger to the establishment,
A little
right?
bit, yeah.
And it's also there, I think, in some ways to scare off the people that the show is not for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do foresee that. Well, I assume that there were a lot of very religious people that were like watching this in secret because it was like,
I know that there were.
Yeah, like it
I
was
know,
like their,
I know that.
Like guilty pleasure kind of thing, right? But then once they got past the boobies and the peepees, then they realized like, ooh, well, there's a story here. Like, this is a good story. Like, oh, I hate that guy, and I like that guy, and that guy's weird, and and then you just go through the whole, and it's a whole character drama, and it's fantastic.
It is. Well, it's more than anything, it's a buddy comedy, right?
Mm-hmm. Some are more buddies than others. I mean.
Right, sure, but it's a hero's journey.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's set up that way, with the band of heroes sort of moving forward. But it's a story of self-discovery, really. I think for everybody involved in the show, right?
Everybody, including the audience.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about it, is that and even myself as an audience, it's like when you're there and you see, it's a totally different thing than when it's edited and you understand that there's the narrative running through, right? And then even to see yourself within that narrative, and I think that we all sort of got that. We'll have to do. You suggested doing Psychology of Gigolos. I think it's really interesting on this tip to talk about it.
Yeah.
Talking about propaganda, talking about driving a narrative. It was a fascinating experience to be inside of.
Really? You're just going to leave that there?
There's a lot of those. I'm just going to leave it. Just going to leave it hanging in the air. I'll just let it just hang. Just hang in the air. I'll do a little salt. I'll just let it hang. Yeah. No, it's okay. We could do that. I think that it's a fun one for people to understand, like how the crafting of a narrative, on this, the question of which is more important, right? Like, back to the moon. Which is more important? Is the constructed narrative actually more important? Or is the actual event more important? Like, it's like, which is more important? Is the Alex Haley book, Autobiography of Malcolm X, which is weird that Autobiography of Malcolm X is a biography, not an autobiography, and the Spike Lee movie, Malcolm X, are those two more important, or is the actual life of Malcolm X more important?
Well, to me, this is the danger, and this is why I've never had idols. This is why I've never believed in people, because your heroes will fail you. And when you look beneath the covers and when you peel back the facade, you see that the people that you've admired and looked up to are just as flawed and full of warts as everybody else.
But I think that that's the entire reason why that practice is not advisable. Like, the question is, okay, let's say Jesus was an actual person.
Sure.
Okay, let's say he's a historical person. What is more important? Is it more important that I have all of the factual information about Jesus, or are the Gospels and what I can draw out of those for my own life more important?
It's way more important to the teachings, the beliefs, the what is imparted through that person's life is far more important than their everyday.
This is what I'm saying.
And honest to God, this lesson is taught by the show Gigolos, which we can talk about next week.
Exactly.
But, yeah. All right. I'm going to save that one till next week, because it is kind of a, it's a big nugget. It's part of like the whole narrative. It's like tying together the show Gigolos and Jesus. Yes, I can do this, but I'm going to do it next week.
Can't wait for that.
and I'm going to do it through the vessel of me and my own experience.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's a good thing.
But to answer the question, like, yeah. I do think that, and this is what Jordan Peterson calls a meta truth.
Okay.
To where it's to say, and Joseph Campbell talked about it in terms of like symbols and signs.
Yeah.
To where it's like, the sign is the thing that actually happened, right? And that story is maybe true and maybe not true.
Okay.
But the symbol is always true.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, if we're talking about this symbol of, let's say it's Christ on the cross, and the last words, and he's put into the the tomb, and then they come back 3 days later and he's gone, and they've rolled back the rock, and it's like those are all symbols. This is talking about an archetypal story. It's talking about this sort of death and rebirth motif. That's true.
Yeah.
Like, it's really true.
Sure.
It's very unimportant whether or not this happened in real life. And I think that's where in real life, because the fact of the matter is, no, not only did it happen in real life, it happens in your own life. And that's why it resonates and has been resonating with human beings. The idea of death and rebirth, the idea of standing for something, of having your life destroyed because you stood for that thing, but then being renewed because you stood for that thing and being reborn as a more powerful individual. That is true.
So think about the power of the symbolism that we invest, or that people invest, in the American flag.
Right.
And the worship of the American flag. And
the sky cloth.
Veneration of the American flag, right? So you got some football player, apparently, who doesn't want to, like, stand up or something.
Right.
I legitimately have I don't care, right? Like, who fucking cares? But apparently, a whole lot of people care a whole lot.
That's right.
And they're very mad. And Nike has put out, like, black and white ads because they're serious, super serious. Because, when we go black and white, it's serious.
Oh, when Nike goes black and white.
Oh, it's serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
once you go black and white,
you never go back. It doesn't rhyme.
Once you go black and white, you're in for a fight.
Oh, see, this is why you won the epic rap battle, which, honest to God, was like seriously, it was like you were beating up a toddler. I mean, come on,
Yes,
Good
folks, there is a
God.
rap battle in Gigolos. There's everything in Gigolos.
There
let's be
is.
honest.
There's everything. And, I was just curious. I'm like, I wonder how he's going to do. Vin's my man. Yeah, I love Vin. And I'm just like, I hope he does pretty well. I mean, this Nick guy is terrible. But I'm hoping that Vin's actually pretty good, because he doesn't actually do any rapping on the show other than, like, a little preview of a song that he wrote, 15 years before that.
Right, exactly.
And so I'm like, I'm looking forward to this. Because in order to properly rap battle, you actually get in front of another human being.
Yes.
And on the fly, you come up with insults and clever things to say.
Exactly.
That rhyme and that have a flow. And so there is an entire artistry around doing this. It's very complex.
Yeah.
And you have to, like, practice. I mean, not only do you have to have, like, a gift of, musical ability and lyrical ability and, practice and learning, like, okay, here's, like, some patterns, like you internalize some, flow patterns and things to, like how you lay it out and that kind of stuff. But you can't be thinking about that in the moment.
No.
In the moment.
That'll make you nervous.
Right. It's got to be second nature.
Yeah.
It's got to be second nature. And so then when you get on stage and they hand you the mic first, so you have no idea what your opponent's all about, except, all the terrible recordings that he made. And then you lay into him with some actually very clever stuff. And you refer back to, like, oh shit, I'm blanking on the name of the children's stories. What was
Mother Goose?
Mother Goose, yeah, that was one I was trying to think of. So you're like, it rhymes like Mother Goose. And I was sitting there going, whew, that's pretty awesome. I'm literally giggling in my living room, like, so that's pretty good. And then the other guy goes, and then, it's bad, and it's just like one long run-on sentence, and there's no flow, and there's no rhythm. And then at the end, he's like, and we're going to fight or something. And I'm just like, dude, you really have no idea how this works. Like, you are just, like, there's something wrong with you. I'm not huge into rap, but I still get how it works, and I still appreciate the skill that goes into doing that whole thing. And like, wow, this dude is calling himself a hardcore rapper. He wasn't in any sense.
I think that there's this weird, this is what I experienced. And I think that it goes to the idea, it goes to the dim age idea, and it goes to the algorithm idea as well. And I'm seeing it. and I know that this is a bug in the human brain, is you can't. Ego's a motherfucker. It really is. And if you dismiss, I think it's important to deal with your insecurities, right? People want to
100%.
People want to like push them to the side, cover them up with something, fix things, right? They want to fix things. But it's like no. And this is something that has been true with many people who have been on reality TV, and I experienced it myself, is that, and other co-stars of mine, like I saw them doing these things as well, that it's like, you put yourself out there, you're going to be criticized for something. The thing that I think most people, and it takes a level of evolution to realize, is it doesn't matter what this specific is. Haters gonna hate. Like, you gotta understand, the haters. If someone's hating on you, they're hating on you out of envy. They're going to, like a political cartoon, you don't escape the gaze of the political cartoonist, right? They're going to emphasize
Gaze, not Gays.
Right. Yes. Gaze. Them looking at you. You might not escape the other gays too if they said some gays after you. I don't know.
I'm wanting to clarify for our audience.
This is not the prison story.
How to fight in prison. Don't go to prison.
Try to escape the gaze of the political cartoonist.
Correct.
No, they're going to emphasize something.
Yes.
That's how haters operate.
Right.
It doesn't. And the thing is, everybody's got that something. Everybody got that something. No, this is.
We have reached the song and dance portion of the show, ladies and gentlemen.
I can't help it. There's one every show. That's got, so you got it. I gotta have one. So no, everybody has something.
Yeah.
And you're going to get called out. Like, look, Alex Jones, they're making the frogs gay. Like, there's nothing that you can do. So you got to make a choice. You got to be like, okay, I've either got to get all right with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get all right with that, that is going to be what destroys you.
Sure.
That's going to be the thing that you're overcompensating for, which makes it worse.
Totally worse.
Like,
because you're giving it power.
It's Donald Trump in his hair. It's Donald Trump in his hair.
Yeah.
Like, and thankfully he's laid off the tan, but it was the tan too.
Yeah.
Like,
he was darker than you.
It's going. Well, he was oranger than me. You're gonna accentuate that shield that you're trying to put up is going to be exactly the thing that is going to be the target.
And this is the trap that people with people who are super oversensitive and very insecure, they fall into the trap of thinking that they can have a defense against everything. And you can't.
Not.
There's no defense.
There's not.
You have to love yourself, and you have to just
I don't even know that it's loving yourself. I think that there's a great value in just understanding that haters going to hate.
Oh, they are, yeah.
And to be like, and I think that was more than anything, and it's been very useful for me, certainly in recent months, to where it's like, no, your haters can be your publicity team. Like, there are things that I know, and that I know that if I tweet them, and what's funny is that people will reach out to me and say, oh, so-and-so is going to hate retweet you on this. And it's like, yeah, I know. That's why I tweeted it. Like, it's for them.
Right.
It's for them to hate retweet me because they've even got more followers than I do. And they're putting my shit on their timeline.
Sure.
Like,
publicity.
They're paying attention to me.
Yep.
And there's a ton of people that hate them.
Yep.
So all the people that hate them now think I'm fantastic because they're looking to see, oh, who is this guy? Yeah, I hate this motherfucker, but he hates this person. That's my follow.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, it's Aikido. You just fucking use them.
Mm-hmm. Use your opponent's, momentum
use their momentum against
yeah.
them. And it's like, that's where people go wrong, is that they want to stop the haters. I'm like, no, because you're a hater and everybody knows you're a hater. This is the sort of like, this is the flip it on its head. I mean, this is propaganda. This is how the ideologies fight one another. Because it's like, back to the thing with the flag and the kneeling. Yeah. Like, we saw that division happen. That it was basically like, okay, here's Colin Kaepernick. He's kneeling. Nike says, we're going to do this campaign with Colin Kaepernick. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Here's an athlete who's retired because can't get a job, right? Can't get a job in the NFL because no one will hire him because he's toxic, which means you get a discount. He's a discounted athlete. With
a recognizable name.
Well, here's what's so interesting, though, is that it's like, how brilliant. See, and this is Nike's PR propaganda. This is where you know that you're being played.
Yes.
Everybody here is being played. How they're being played is this. Nike is playing Moneyball. They're like, who is the cheapest spokesperson we could get to get the most bang for our buck in a marketing campaign?
Geniuses.
Colin Kaepernick. They're like, people, because it's amazing to be like, wouldn't it be crazy? Even if someone is burning Nikes, they're still burning Nikes.
Which they probably paid for.
No, which they guaranteed pay for. All these people who are burning, like they're burning their own shit. And the fact of the matter is that it's like, crazy. For every person that's burning Nikes, there's another person who wouldn't have bought Nikes except for the fact that, oh, look at this guy. Oh, yeah, I don't like him. Oh, he's burning Nikes? Oh, I'm buying Nikes. For every person that burns them, 2 people buy them. Mm-hmm. And why the fuck does Nike care if you burn some shit? We already made those. We already sold them.
Yep.
We only care about our new inventory.
Sure.
It's just like stocks, right? After the IPO, I care about the stocks that I'm holding. I really don't give a shit who owns. I mean, I do care if you sell off, if you hold a lot and you sell them off, but it's like, the stocks are going to be bought and sold. Mm-hmm. I really don't care who owns the stock besides the stock that I own, so long as the price goes up. Yep. And it's even more so, though, in the case of burning Nikes, because that doesn't drop the price of the pair of Nikes in the store. No. So long as you don't burn the store down or the warehouse. See, nobody's burning the warehouse down. Nobody's burning the store down.
Because it's professional wrestling.
Exactly.
It is totally professional wrestling. So you'll recall when Sergeant Slaughter and the Iron Sheik.
Oh, God, you're taking me back now.
Nikolai Volkov.
Yes.
Let's go back to your childhood, and I will, resurrect these memories from the back of your brain.
Oh, that was straight in the middle of the Cold War.
I am telling you what, these guys, when they had their feud, their blood feud going on, and, it was, the hero Sergeant Slaughter, and, then you had Nikolai Volkov, the Russian. And, they were battling, and they were making each other bleed, and it was fantastic. And then what happened? Sergeant Slaughter turned.
He turned evil.
He did.
He was a heel. Yeah.
He became a heel. And what happened? The fans went nuts. They were angry.
Yeah, they were so angry.
Throwing things and spitting, but they were still buying merchandise. They were still buying tickets.
Oh, they were tuning in every week to see what was going to happen with this storyline.
Big time. Big time. Because when you have a compelling bad guy, it sells more product than... A lot of times the compelling good guy. I mean, literally a compelling bad guy will sell more product.
Well, that's Colin Kaepernick. He's a bad guy.
And Nick Hawk.
Well, no, there's something to be said for the bad guy.
Totally, absolutely. Without Satan, God doesn't exist.
Well, he's certainly not as interesting. Let's just put it like that.
Interesting. Because, true, Satan was never an antagonist of God. Satan was the antagonist of man. So, sure, you could have God, but he'd be boring and lonely without all the other stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, not even boring and lonely. He rests. Because we're in the seventh day.
Sure. I mean, just like, Cthulhu rests.
Right. Until, he's a good villain. Cthulhu's a very, very good villain. No, I think that there is, this is the problem that I see with, in many ways, with the democratization of the narrative, is because you don't really have very good villains. This is the problem that I have with a lot of the conspiracy theory stuff, and why there's no meat in the narrative, right? Like there's no meat in the narrative of Nibiru is following us and they saw a fleet of aliens and there's this and there's that, and it's like, why did someone leave an X-Files DVD in the trash can where we could see it? And it's like, man, that's like you seeing the Virgin Mary in a piece of toast, bro. Like,
those are the best.
I mean, you're literally that guy.
Yeah.
You're really fucking that guy.
Yeah. I saw a cloud look like Jesus. It was amazing.
There was one thing that was, and I think that it typifies the whole thing. So there's a guy who flies a drone. This is worth seeing just to sort of, from a psychological standpoint.
Okay.
Right? So, simultaneously, up at that sunspot thing, there's a guy who from outside flies a drone.
Is this the two people walking video?
Over the top, right.
Yes. Love this video.
Now, there's two people walking when he's flying the drone. Then, the two guys who were walking were filming a YouTube video. And they see the drone. It's a father and his son.
Okay. And they filmed the drone?
Yes.
Excellent.
Now.
Because I saw the guy on the right, turn around and see the drone.
Yes. Yeah. So you see this take place. Now, what's funny is the drone guy is like, I'm looking. There's these two people. I don't know who they are. Are they some sort of security? Are they patrolling? The two guys who are on the ground say, look. Somebody's flying a drone. I wonder if that's is that government? We don't know who it is. So it's this weird juxtaposition of these two guys. So these guys have this confirmation bias that there's a drone flying above. It must be significant to this whole thing.
It's got to be FBI.
The guy who's flying says there's these two guys walking. It must be significant.
Yep.
And I just thought, I was like, that perfect.
Scene.
And fucking scene. All of you. This is the typification of fucking all of you. Because what it says is that you're seeing the Virgin Mary in a piece of toast.
You're seeing what you want to see.
You want every single thing that you see to confirm your existing beliefs. No.
Not only your existing beliefs, but your existence. You want confirmation of your value in the guy flying the drone. He wasn't doing it because he, it's like, I'm flying this drone just for me. No, he wouldn't have fucking posted it on YouTube.
Right.
It was for validation. He was looking for external validation. Yes. And as soon as he flew that drone and he saw the two people, he's like, it's FBI. Look at me. I'm going to be somebody. And those two people on the ground,
same thing.
It's a drone. The FBI has noticed us. Look at it, and it's just like, come on.
It's the 15 minutes of fame, and I think that it's a weird. You can have, and it's why I say that I like what we're doing here, because it's a slow burn.
Yeah,
is that when you do something of value, it's not going to be this immediate, you're not even going to notice as it builds. And I think it goes sort of to your guy who got the 10 million followers over time and then did this thing. You just have to be, if you're not aware, it burns so slowly that you eventually look back and you're like, oh, like Alex Jones. Oh, there's a whole fucking operation here now. Like I was just going along and it felt like when I had started, I thought I was the same person. You know, I knew that occasionally I added this and this got added and, oh, we upgraded the studio and, oh, we did this and we moved along until you're Joe Rogan interviewing Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And, oh, it's no big deal that we're going to smoke weed because we've always smoked weed, even though you say before you hand him the joint, oh, you can't do this, I'm sure, because your stock will go down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hand him the joint and then his stock drops. The Tesla stock drops 17%, which I know Joe Rogan didn't want to happen. But it's like these things get, if you're not paying attention, if you're not looking, you slowly creep into a situation and then all of a sudden, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm somebody else. Now what do I do? You know, I'm in a whole new landscape. I just, I had been walking down this path and I hadn't peeked my head up and looked around. That's what people don't do.
People end up surrounded by toxic people that they don't recognize as toxic.
Oh, that's 100%.
And by doing this, they are insulated from people that could actually help them. So they, even though they're protected in a way, they're still not living in reality, So,
but it's interesting. See,
interesting.
I've had my fair share of incredibly, probably beyond the level that most people could imagine, toxic relationships, just because I got to be a goddamn master at relationships.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you're when it's bull riding and you're looking at the professional bull riders, they're riding some fucking scary ass animals.
Oh, yeah.
When you're a lion tamer, you're fucking with fucking lions. You know what I mean? And tigers. But to you, it's normal because you've been doing this your whole life.
Until they eat you, like Siegfried and Roy.
This is what I'm saying. And on occasion, it happens.
Yeah.
And on occasion, but still, you're like, I knew this going in. I kind of knew. It's never out of your head that, like, I knew this. I chose this. This is what I'm doing. This is how I chose to make a living. I'm doing this because other people can't do it. So I've stepped into some situations in my life that are like, that probably would have driven individuals who had a lower level of, let's say, experience, wisdom, whatever it is. Tolerance. Perhaps to suicide. Who knows?
Sure.
Right? Just for the fact that it was an adventure.
Yeah.
Right? That it's like, hey, I'm going to have a relationship with the tiger.
Yeah.
Right? It's the Siegfried and Roy thing. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to have a relationship, an ongoing relationship with a 600-pound fucking killing machine.
Yep.
And I'm going to be like, oh, I love you, and blah, blah. That is still a 600-pound killing machine.
Exactly.
But, you say, this is what I want. This is exciting. This is what I want to do. And so I've been in the exact same sort of situation when it comes to relationships. And I think that what can happen is I think that we are all after a certain level of appreciation, excitement, that sort of 15 minutes of fame, sort of the high, the jolt. This is my worry with with the dim age, with the place that we're going to, is that every interesting thing that happens becomes an opportunity for some sort of weird one-upsmanship, some sort of weird, let me insert myself into the algorithm with this crazy conspiracy.
Yeah.
And it just gets weirder and weirder and sicker and darker and darker.
And dumber and dumber.
Until the point, but what I'm worried is that we are coming to a point where that's normal, where we've raised the sort of chatter level to where people start there.
Yeah.
And yet it's not a reflection of reality at all.
Or is it? Reality is perception.
Well, this is an important part.
Right.
Important point.
If your perception is entirely guided by the algorithm and you really believe that everyone around you, you have a friend circle who supports your points of view, and you have an internet circle that supports your point of view, and you have this insulated blanket of reality around you, where does reality actually intersect with your life?
I mean, this is the question. I think that a lot of it depends upon, and I think that we are going to see this play out. I said that with this, like, it started with Alex Jones. He's the canary in the coal mine. But I'm seeing it myself now. Like, I had said that, like, the next step in social media is siloing.
Yeah.
Where people are going to move on to platforms where they're siloed within. So, like, it was either today or yesterday. Now, there's all these, like, between Slack and Discord, Telegram, Signal. There's all these things with groups. Now, so someone invited me either yesterday or today into a Telegram group, brand new Telegram group. And they were like, the way they kind of sold it, they reached out to me, and the way they sold it was like, oh, yeah, it's like not a lot of noise. It's like all Signal. And it was like, I was like, who's in this group? And they showed me. And it was interesting. It's like a lot of top developers and whatnot, some of the big miners and entrepreneurs, and they were like, no, I'm the sole moderator. Like, I'll make sure that it stays on track and the whole thing. And it's like, wow, very interesting that social networks are now going to move into this very siloed, private, bubble-like state, as though it wasn't already bad.
Yeah, but I mean, this is...
Now the echo chamber is going to be just so small.
So Cody Wilson.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to talk about that today, but I don't think we're going to get into it.
Okay.
We could talk. I think next week is the time to talk about it when we're talking about this whole Gigolos thing. I have so much to say about this.
So the only Cody Wilson thing I want to say is that he came to Liberty Forum 2 years ago.
Well, he's supposed to come February. He may not be able to make it.
He might be in Taiwan.
Right. No, he just got arrested.
Oh, did he?
He got arrested.
Oh, I
today.
thought he was searching for apartments in Taiwan.
They arrested him.
Huh. So, government conspiracy? Actual?
For sure.
Like, yeah.
I've got some things to say about that, but for sure, government conspiracy. No question.
So, he did offer some, what I felt, in the moment, I was like, oh, what a dick. But then afterwards, I'm like, no, he's probably right. 2-3 years ago, he came to Liberty Forum. Mm-hmm. And, we're like, oh, what do you think of the event? And he's like, oh, it's pretty good for a libertarian circle jerk. And I was like, oh, how dare you? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't say anything, but I was like a little offended inside. And then I'm like, you know what? It really is. It is totally a libertarian circle jerk. We're all talking about how bad government is and how great we are and how enlightened we are and blah, blah, blah. We have this insulative bubble of everybody we frickin' talk to is some flavor of libertarian. Sure, we've got some jerks that are like, oh, if you're not as libertarian as me, then you're not libertarian.
Yeah, well, that's...
Yeah. And then, then we've got, minarchists, and we've got people that believe that, oh, a little bit of government's okay. It's fine.
Sure. But all libertarians.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I've got friends like on all sides. I've got like, freaking liberal friends. I got conservative friends. I got friends.
I've got a Marxist professor brother.
There you go. Right. Yeah. And he's blood related. That's exactly crazy, bro. So, You know, it's like you can be friends with people you disagree with.
Of course,
it's all
yeah.
right. So we actually took that criticism to heart a little bit, and we brought in some more diverse speakers and that kind of thing. But it's an interesting thing that we had fallen into that same trap of we only want the people that agree with our like general philosophy, and we're
It's
going
the
to
echo chamber.
It's the echo chamber, and setting that up and perpetuating that is a mistake. 100%.
Well, there's no adventure there. The whole thing about the hero's journey is to journey into the unknown.
Yes.
It's all about a journey into unknown territory. Lord of the Rings is great for this, right? That it's
phenomenal.
like, I mean, that's Tolkien. It's crazy because he was way before Joseph Campbell, but he intuited this amazing, perfect hero's journey, and it's like the idea of the Shire. Like that's where most people are living. And I feel like that's where a lot of conspiracy theorists are in the conspiracy theorist Shire. Right? They're conspiracy theorist hobbits.
Yeah.
Well, because the hobbits are neurotic and scared, right? They never want to leave the Shire. That's one thing about them. Hobbits don't leave the Shire.
They don't, but I think it's because they genuinely love just being connected to the earth and growing vegetables and drinking beer.
That's not how Tolkien describes it, though.
It's a simple life.
Tolkien is like, no, they're scared. This is really how he plays it off, that it's like there's the justification of why would I ever want to go anywhere outside of the Shire?
They're xenophobes.
They're xenophobes.
They are.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool. Back in the day, it was all right to be xenophobic. You know, but there is a certain appeal to the natural values
Oh, no doubt.
of, you know, growing things naturally and, you know, just
Well, look, no doubt. I mean, we literally live in the Shire. It's
we do.
New Hampshire, like and it's called the Shire. Like
It is.
and if you live here, you know, for me, this is something that I've been, I wouldn't say struggling with, but I've certainly been thinking about it, is that and I'm glad that I have Cointext and I'm glad that I'm doing things in crypto, because were I not, it is very, very easy. I could see myself very, very easily just getting comfortable here, to just being fucking Bilbo Baggins, dude. Just like chilling in the Shire, chilling in my little hobbit hole. I've got my hobbit hole. I'm good. Everybody, I can spend time around lots of people who think exactly like I think, you know, but the battle is out there. And I'm glad that we're doing this. You know what I mean? That it's like to push things outwards.
And the battle is within you.
Well, it always is. It always is. Well, what's out, as without within, as above, so below.
I do have a spooky story. Real quick.
Is it 2 minutes long?
It is.
Okay, go.
All right. So the other day I was chilling at Kentucky Fried Chicken, minding my business, eating food and finger licking.
Are you really going to do this? Don't do this.
Well, this dude walked in.
Don't do this. No, don't.
Looking strange.
Don't do Fresh Prince.
Kind
don't
of
do it.
funny. It's not Fresh Prince. It's Run DMC.
Oh, Run DMC. Yes.
It is. Yeah. He walked up to the front with a menu and his money. He didn't walk straight though. You know, kind of side to side.
Yeah.
He asked this old lady, "Is this
Kentucky
Fried?" The lady said yes and smiled, and he smiled back. He gave her a quarter in his order, small fries,
Big Mac. You be illin. Illin.
I love you, man. This is what makes this amazing.
You be illin. It is Red DMC. Oh my God. Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next Friday. I think we're going to do Psychology of Gigolos.
I would
Is
love
that
to
what
do
we're
that.
going to do?
That would be
Okay.
phenomenal.
All right. So that's what we're going to do. Psychology of Gigolos next week on Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. Before we go, though, I'm going to say again, what?
5 stars.
5 stars on iTunes. Go to iTunes. Just Google iTunes Vin and Dave Destination Unknown. Go. 5 stars. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Bye.